Hi folks, my name is Hayden McCown. In this video, I will be showing you how to complete the DNR's updated Recreational Trail Management Objective Form, or TMO for short. I pre-recorded the audio for this video, so you'll notice it's a little awkward, but I'm just not coordinated enough to read the script and show you everything across the different pages I have pulled up. Thanks for checking out this video, and don't hesitate to let the Recreation Division team know how we can improve this form. The TMO form can be found in the Trails library on SharePoint. To find the Trails library, open SharePoint, and under Divisions, navigate to Recreation and Conservation. On the upper left side of this page, there is a list of teams. Select Recreation. There's a list on the left side of the Recreation page, and this is where you'll find the Trails library. The Trails library is where your completed TMO form will be uploaded. You'll find the blank form and helpful reference materials on the right side of the Trails library under the Forms, References, and Policy Documents sections. We updated the TMO with the goal of making it easier for staff to complete and focused on information that will be used to create an externally available GIS trail dataset. As you work through this, remember that the information you enter on the TMO will be used to help build a publicly available dataset. If you are familiar with the design and management objectives of a trail and you know a trail's length, you should be able to complete the new TMO form in about 10 minutes. If you're not familiar with the trail and need to collect trail length data, it will take longer to complete. So let's dive into step 8 of the trail development section of the Procedures of the Recreational Trails Policy, which is to complete the trail management objective form. First off, here's the old TMO form. You can tell this is the old version because of the document identifier at the bottom, WA DNR TMO Form V1 from June 2018. So we know that this is version 1 from June 2018. Folks were using all sorts of versions before then. The new TMO Forms identifier, the one you will be using, is WA DNR TMO Form version 2, September 2025. So this is the DNR TMO Form version 2 from September 2025. Then it says approved by the Recreation and Conservation Division Manager, 925. So knowing who approved this form and when should help recreation program staff better maintain these documents for department use. We've also uploaded the memo approving these documents signed by Crystal Olson-Keene, the Recreation and Conservation Division Manager, to the Trails library on SharePoint. So that's where you'll find confirmation that this is the most up-to-date version of the TMO form that you should be using. Here's the new TMO form. For those of you feeling nostalgic, when you click in a blue text field, you'll notice we've carried forward the yellow background from previous versions of this document. Also, if you're using this online through SharePoint, the text field may show up yellow. I'm not sure why it does that. I have noticed that if you use it through SharePoint, the date fields do not show up. So go ahead and save it to your desktop, J Drive, or the OneDrive and edit it from there. This will help us be consistent in how the data is recorded. So we'll just go through and fill this out. There are drop downs for which region you are in. Type in the name of the landscape and the trail system/area. I've spent my whole career in Northwest Region, so I'm just going to go with what I know. Northwest Region, the landscape is Blanchard State Forest, and the trail system or area is also Blanchard. It's okay for these to be duplicate. We're looking for accurate information, and these do not have to be different. For somewhere like Capital State Forest, I would put that in for the landscape name, and then if you were completing a TMO for a new bike trail on North Slope, it would make sense to put North Slope in for the trail system/area. For trail name, let's go with Rickworld. Some of you may remember Rick Foster. He managed Blanchard for about 20 years before retiring in 2020, and when we got around to sanctioning this trail, we came up with Rickworld as a subtle nod to Rick. He was pretty touched when I gave him a trail map with that trail name on there, and I think he has it framed and hanging on his wall. Anyway, that brings us to the next little checkbox here, which is trail name has been approved by the RCD manager or designee. Trail names require division approval. Prior to this project of updating the policy and writing the procedures, I don't think that was common knowledge in the recreation program. If you look at step 7 of trail development of the Procedures of the Recreational Trails Policy, you'll notice the action item is trail names will be approved in writing, and that action is by the RCD manager or designee. So if you're following the procedures, you will already have your trail name approved in writing before you start on your TMO form. A little side note here, the ADM for Recreation, who is currently Andrea Martin, can approve trail names. There is no requirement for how written approval is obtained. For convenience, an optional trail name approval template has been uploaded to the Trails library under the Forms section. Moving on to the Primary Management Objective, or PMO. In DNR policy, the primary management objective is defined as the primary or designed use for which an area or facility is managed. A primary management objective does not necessarily exclude other use types. The options are the same as the RCO list of trail primary management objectives. We have hike, bike, pack and saddle, motorcycle, all-terrain vehicle, four-wheel drive vehicle over 50 inches, snowshoe, snowmobile, cross-country ski, and education/interpretation. I'm not sure if we have cross-country ski trails yet, but we put them on here because I know there have been discussions among the regions about developing them. The last option here, education/interpretation, may be used by natural area preserves. Per the Natural Area Preserve Public Access Policy, low levels of public access outside of environmentally sensitive areas may be approved on some NAPs when consistent with conservation, research, and education goals of those NAPs. So while NAPs typically do not manage recreation trails, you may choose education/interpretation as your NAP trail's primary management objective. For NRCAs that allow low impact recreation, go ahead and choose the PMO that best works for you. That may be hiking, it may be education or interpretation, and for all I know, it could be another PMO on this list. For trails on state lands, choose the primary management objective that best fits. In some cases, that may be the education interpretation option, but I think that is atypical. I know this is a little confusing when you have multi-use trails, but I encourage you not to overthink it and to be consistent. We do not need to select the type of use with the highest design standard as the primary management objective. Just because horses are allowed on the multi-use trails at Blanchard, and we maintain 10-foot clearing limits and design bridges to accommodate horses, does not mean that pack and saddle is the default primary management objective for those trails. This goes for motorized trails too. Just because a trail can accommodate off-road vehicles wider than 50 inches does not mean they are the default PMO. For our multi-use trails at Blanchard, I would say hiking is the PMO because that user group has the highest number of users and performs the most maintenance. There are probably 200 hikers to every equestrian user at Blanchard. Then I would select pack and saddle and bicycles as allowed secondary uses. For somewhere like the Harry Osborn State Forest, which is primarily used and maintained by the equestrian community, I would select pack and saddle as the PMO and hiking and walking as an allowed secondary use. If we default to choosing the PMO that represents the highest design standard, it could be problematic and give a small user group an improper amount of influence over department trail management strategies. So go ahead and select the PMO that best reflects your trail. Regardless of primary management objective, we will be able to capture the costs of varying trail maintenance. We will be able to capture the varying costs of maintaining trails to different design standards by searching for those trails in the Trails Dataset schema in the Allowed Secondary Uses category. I think we covered all of the primary management objective options here, but please reach out if we missed something. As recreational trends and technologies change, we do want to keep this form up to date. For our example, I am selecting bicycle because Rickrolled is a bike trail, which I am using as an example because there are specific bike trail components further on in the TMO. Let's stay on the topic of allowed secondary uses. Some use types are seasonal, so in Capitol Forest, for example, motorcycles are only allowed in the summer from May 1st to November 30th, if I recall correctly. When you're putting in the dates, don't worry about the year. In theory, I have this formatted correctly so that the year won't show up. Select all of the use types allowed on the trail, aside from your PMO, in this Allowed Secondary Uses section, and for uses that have a set calendar start and end date, include that information as well. Condition-dependent uses are hopefully self-explanatory. The trails are open as the conditions allow. It is important to have this option for snowmobile trails, for instance, which might allow snowshoers as a secondary use, such as in the Loomis, and where opening and closing dates are dependent on conditions and are not fixed on the calendar year to year. Pets are allowed on DNR trails unless signed otherwise, and so long as they are leashed or if they are accompanying pack animals and under voice command. If they are allowed on your trail, check this box. NRCA and NAP trails typically don't allow pets, so they typically won't check this box. Rickrolled does allow pets, so we're checking the box. Trail status is pretty straightforward. You have three options: open with seasonal restrictions, or closed. Most trails will probably be open. A trail with snowmobiles as the PMO would be open with seasonal restrictions because that route is not open to snowmobiles year-round, and we don't want someone thinking they can go run their snowmobile on winter snowmobile routes in the Tiana Way in August. It's a little silly that we have to think this way, but I imagine if our external data set said we have a snowmobile route without this seasonal restriction qualifier, someone might try it. My guess is the closed option will be used to close a trail that was previously open to the public. I can't think of a scenario where you would want to fill out a new TMO for a closed trail, but there may be a situation I'm not considering. If you're trying to close a trail temporarily, keep the publicly accessible external data set in mind. It may be helpful to change this field of your TMO so that the public viewing the external data set sees up-to-date information. This could be used for temporary closures like a timber sale or a trail washout, but that is up to you and your capacity to maintain this form and submit it to the Trails Library. Rickrolled is an open trail. All right, the next drop down is for a proposed or existing trail. For trails to be submitted to the dataset, you have to choose existing and get the form signed by the region manager or designee. The signature requirement was spelled out in the 2015 Recreational Trails Policy and didn't change in the updates to the 2025 Recreational Trails Policy. I see the proposed option being useful for when you are planning a project and want to share the TMO with external partners. Hopefully, the proposed option provides you with the operational flexibility of sharing this form with your community and nonprofit partners while appropriately managing public expectations. Year of designation. Hopefully, this is self-explanatory. Reach out if you have questions. If you don't know the year and you are retroactively filling out a TMO for an already designated trail, ask around. One time I was able to get the history of a trail called Max's Shortcut at Blanchard from some of our older volunteers. The trail was built in the 80s, and we don't have anyone in the Northwest Region Recreation Program who was working for the department at that time. All right, trail location and length. This section isn't perfect and may require some creativity on your part. This section is pulled verbatim from older versions of the TMO. This can be helpful information for rec managers, fellow DNR staff, and the public. As trails are grown over or get harvested, sometimes they can be challenging to find. If a trail starts or ends on a DNR road, use the DNR road name and mile number. So for Rickrolled, I know it ends on the Blanchard Main Line Road, or the BLML. When I was preparing this presentation, I didn't know how far up the BLML road Rickrolled ends. I started to open Citrix and was going to dive into ArcGIS. But Citrix can be slow, and I remembered I could map it out on Google Earth. So I created a new path on Google Earth and was able to measure the distance in a few minutes. So I know the trail ends at about 2.2 miles up the BLML. For this measurement, I'm going to say BLML 2.2 miles. For the beginner milepost reference, this trail starts off on another trail in the trail system. Luckily, we already have this mapped out, and I can pull up the trail map and see that Rickrolled starts 2.6 miles up the Lily Lizard Trail. This is a 1.3 trail mile measurement, and here's another. So for this, I'm going to say Lily Lizard Trail 2.6 miles. We also have the trail length already mapped out, as you can see here on the map. So I can just input 1.2 in the trail length section and select miles here at the end. Again, if this isn't already mapped out, you can use Google Earth or ArcGIS and probably figure it out in a few minutes. And if using mapping software is new to you, call a friend. Chances are someone in your region is pretty good with a mapping tool and can get you going in the right direction. This next part applies when you have a section of a trail and it would be best to complete a different TMO for each section. Examples of this could be if the PMO changes along the trail or if your allowed secondary uses change. There could also be different designed use objectives across different sections of trail, which we'll cover next. In these cases, it's probably best to complete a different TMO for the different sections. First, label your section. This could be as simple as the trail name and section 1, 2, or 3, and so on. So we have the same questions as above in the trail length and location category, but here you can use the beginning milepost reference or the section beginning termini or other reference text fields to list where your trail starts. If possible, keep this short. These text fields are not meant for a paragraph, so trail intersections work and trail mileposts work. Like I said, you may need to get creative in this part of the form, but it's not intended to be complicated, so don't make it overly complicated. It's one or the other, milepost reference or section termini reference. Go ahead and complete the section length and miles or feet boxes the same way we completed them above. If you are rerouting a trail above and beyond the thresholds for submitting new GIS trail data for mapping, per step 9 of trail development and the procedures of the recreational trails policy, you could fill out a new TMO section for the rerouted portion of the trail, or a new TMO for the whole trail. Either work, and I'm not sure that one is preferred over the other. Moving on to designed use objectives. For those familiar with the old TMO, you may recognize some of this, but here it is in a drop-down format. I think trail type is self-explanatory. We're looking for trail surface type here. Remember that the target result here is someone can quickly sort through all of our trail data. So if we are in the middle of a legislative session and RCO asks DNR how many paved miles of trail we have, the division data manager can provide them with a quick response. The options here are standard terra trail, gravel surface trail, paved trail, and snow trail. If we missed a critical trail type, let us know. The Forest Service defines a standard terra trail as a trail with a surface that is predominantly natural ground rather than snow, ice, or water. So if you have a trail that is grass for 100 feet or a mile of rock steps, I don't think we need to add grass or hard rock as options. I think we just call those standard terra trails. The McClain Creek Nature Trail may be another good example of an outlier for this category. If I recall correctly from elementary school field trips, the trail has long stretches of wood boardwalk in between sections of dirt and gravel. I don't think we would want to call that a standard terra trail. Remember, part of the goal here is to be able to capture maintenance costs. If it were me, I would choose gravel surface trail. Choosing this option for the McClain Creek Nature Trail would reflect that it has a higher maintenance cost than a standard terra trail. If you have questions, reach out to your region or division parks planner, and they should be able to help you clarify which option to choose. For Rickrolled, we'll select option 1, standard terra trail. Trail class. If you're not familiar with the Forest Service Trail Fundamentals definitions, I recommend looking them up. This is a Forest Service product that can be found in the Trails library. There's an accompanying photo book that I recommend checking out too, as it provides pictures of each type of trail class. A Class 1 trail is minimally developed, up to Class 5, which is fully developed. For Rickrolled, we're going to call it Class 2. Next, we have trail standards. The approved options are U.S. Forest Service or WA-DNR mountain bike trail designs. If you are developing a new trail and following the procedures, step 1 of the trail development section is to identify the appropriate department-approved standards for trail development. So you will already know your design standard before completing this TMO. The most common answer here will be U.S. Forest Service trail designs. This covers everything except the optional DNR mountain bicycle trail design parameters and trail ratings matrix, again listed on here as WA-DNR MTB trail designs for short. The WA DNR MTB trail designs may be used when bikes are your primary management objective. If you use this design standard, you need to rate your trails and install corresponding signage in the field. You can have allowed secondary uses on trails using WA DNR MTB trail designs. That said, it might not be the best idea to allow other users on a Black Diamond downhill bike trail. I'm not sure that would be safe. It's worth noting that when bikes are your primary management objective, you are not required to use the DNR MTB trail design standards. If bikes are your primary management objective and it is a multi-use trail, it may be more appropriate to use the U.S. Forest Service design standards. This would result in a trail with fewer jumps and berms and maybe a safer multi-use experience. Jumps and berms encourage mountain bikers to go fast, and the U.S. Forest Service trail designs don't really address those features. If you are using U.S. Forest Service trail standards for a bike trail, it will not be rated or signed as such in the field, which could help better manage the bike community's expectations. The list of approved trail standards may grow as new standards are approved and adopted over time. For how to propose new trail standards, see page 4 of the Procedures of the Recreational Trails Policy. For Rickrolled, we're selecting WA DNR MTB trail designs. Okay, moving on to bike trail difficulty ratings, if applicable. As I just said, any trail that uses WA DNR bike trail standards and trail ratings matrix should be rated. If you need help rating your trails in line with the ratings matrix, you can reach out to the division planning team, reach out to coworkers managing bike trails in other regions, and I would also encourage you to involve your local bike chapter in the conversation, although they should not be independently rating trails. Make sure to have someone from DNR involved for quality control. When in doubt, overrate your trails to reduce risk. The ratings are relative to each other to reduce department risk and use the terms common in the ski and bike park industry. So we have easier, which is a green circle rating, and then it jumps to difficult, which is a blue square, and very difficult, a black diamond, and then experts only, a double black diamond rating. This section is not to be used for trails designed to U.S. Forest Service trail standards or motorized trails, only trails where bikes are the primary management objective and designed to the WA DNR MTB trail design standards. Rickrolled is a black diamond trail, which is very difficult according to the DNR bike trail ratings matrix. Directional travel is an interesting one. I think most of these will be downhill for the bike trails, but we included some other options here. We have uphill, clockwise, and counterclockwise. Bear with me, I'm going to dive into the weeds for a second. We have a few cases of multi-use, non-motorized trails that are only open to bikes uphill. Bikes are then provided with their own downhill route from the top of the climb. We've done this at the Olson Creek State Forest, and there's a short section of this at the North Mountain Skills area, and it may be done elsewhere, such as at Raging River. This is to reduce conflict with hikers and equestrians by having bikes come down those multi-use trails. Bikes move a lot quicker than those other user groups, so this is a nice management option for us. I'm not aware of other DNR examples of uphill-only travel on trails, although I have ridden some uphill directional dirt bike trails in Canada where I was going up a climb, and if someone had been coming downhill at the same time, it would have been pretty challenging. I probably would have needed to get out of the way and stop and turn around and descend before giving the climb another go. If you know dirt bikes, you know it's not easy to turn one around on a steep hill, at least not for a new rider like me. So this directional option may be a nice tool for you to have when managing motorized trails as well as bike trails. As for the clockwise and counterclockwise options, again, I don't know of this being used anywhere in DNR currently, but I have seen some directional cross-country ski trails in the Methow, so that could be a good option as folks develop their cross-country ski trail systems. We might have trails that are really crowded with hikers, and designating a loop direction would improve the user's experience. Or we might have motorized 4x4 trails, and by designating a clockwise or counterclockwise route, we can reduce how much side-by-side passing is going on and try to maintain a narrower trail width. I haven't seen this done, but hopefully it helps us to have options. I do think there are areas where this could improve the user experience, and of course, any directional designation on this TMO form would need corresponding signage in the field. Rickrolled is a downhill directional trail. Okay, directional travel use type. So for the Olson Creek State Forest example I just mentioned, where we have a multi-use trail that is multi-directional for hikers and equestrians, but uphill only for mountain bikers, this is where you would put bikes. This clarifies that on this trail, bikes are only allowed to travel uphill. Most of the time, I think this will be used is when we have downhill directional bike trails, and you'll put bikes here in the directional travel use type category. For Rickrolled, we will put bikes here. Bike trail designation and optional routes is another bike trail only category. This is where you'll select if it is an open trail designation or technical trail designation. For those of you wondering what those are, check out the DNR MTB Trail Design and Ratings Matrix where it is defined. Open Trail Designation, or OTD, is defined as a trail with technical features requiring a higher degree of difficulty in rider's skill set, which shall be optional to the main tread. The Technical Trail Designation, or TTD, definition is trails that are categorized by the same difficulty ratings as all other trails, except that the technical features requiring a higher degree of difficulty in rider's skill set are allowed in the main tread of the trail and are not restricted to being an optional route. So if you have a wider trail and there are jumps on the side of the trail that are not mandatory, that could be an open trail designation. If you have a green trail and there's a spur trail that goes out to a rock roll, that would be considered a black diamond feature. That main green trail could be an open trail designation with an optional technical trail designation, or TTD, route. This is further defined in the ratings matrix, which basically says a green trail can have open or technical trail designation, and blue square through double black diamond trail rated trails are probably technical trail designations. This is important and hopefully helpful information to capture because it will inform you of your sign plan for bike trails. Again, if you are developing a new bike trail and following the procedures, you'll already be familiar with the department-approved bike trail standards, and you'll be thinking about your sign plan. And when you're getting ready to order your signs, you can refer to your TMOs. Rickrolled has a technical trail designation. Okay, optional routes. I just mentioned this briefly, but you can have optional routes on bike trails. The optional route can be easier than the main trail tread, it can be the same difficulty, or it can be more challenging. Optional routes with their difficulty rating need to be signed in the field. So if you have optional routes, click Yes here. For Rickrolled, we do have an optional route around a rock roll, so we choose Yes. The next drop-down box is for optional route difficulty. In our case, the optional route is easier to the main route, so we will put easier. Again, optional routes can be easier, equivalent, more difficult, or you could have multiple optional routes and some are easier and some are harder than the main trail tread. In that case, select multiple. This should help you when you're working on your sign plan.
It's also important to understand the mapping implications of this section. Simply indicating that optional routes exist will not result in them being mapped. In order for optional routes to be mapped in the statewide dataset and elsewhere, they need to be treated as individual trail segments and have their own TMOs submitted. This will result in more clean and consistent mapping while avoiding overcounting our trails. So if you are determining that your optional route needs to be mapped, you'll need to fill out a TMO for it as a unique trail segment and submit the accompanying GPS data.
This next section refers to OPDMD use. OPDMD stands for Other Power-Driven Mobility Devices. So we have a policy regarding OPDMD use. If you haven't read it, I recommend looking it up on the internal policy SharePoint site or in the Trails library. It is policy number P011-003. I'm not going to dive into the OPDMD policy other than to say that to comply with the policy, we are required to maintain an OPDMD allowed uses and operating requirements document, and that document will be maintained and on the DNR's recreation webpage. Reference that document for more information, but if you have a trail that is not suitable to OPDMD use, select this box right here. E-bikes may be considered OPDMDs, so this doesn't apply to Rickrolled. But if it did, we would then want to select the reasons why from the drop-down menu. These reasons have been vetted and these are our options. If you select other, go ahead and provide detail in the special/comments section. Excuse me. If I recall correctly, OPDMD use is incompatible with most natural areas trails, so the natural areas folks will probably be using this option the most. For all of these drop-down boxes that have not applicable as an option, go ahead and select NA versus leaving the box blank. Positive confirmation that you have considered the option and it doesn't apply is preferred over leaving the box blank. That will reduce the need for folks to track you down and double check that you didn't miss the question. The special comments and considerations section is for exactly that. Important information that is not captured on this form. There is no way we considered everything, and I'm certainly not familiar with all the trail management objectives around the state. So if we missed something that needs to be recorded internally, go ahead and enter it here. What you enter into the special comments/considerations section won't be publicly available, but if you're adding info here, you may have a conversation with your region about adding this info elsewhere, such as on the DNR external site. I'm thinking of the Reader 4x4 trail ratings. They have a trail rating system unique to their area that their users are familiar with. Since it only applies to Reader, it doesn't really make sense to try to capture it elsewhere on the form. If you have a cross-country ski trail and you rate it, go ahead and input that information here. If your trail shares a road, mention it here in the comments section. It's worth mentioning that supporting policy documents like the TMO can be edited with the ADM's approval. So if we missed something that would be helpful to include, let the division team know and they'll take a look. All right, signing authority. This is for your region manager or designee. It may be worth asking your region manager if they want to sign TMOs or if they want to delegate that responsibility to an SLA. For regions with recreation district managers, the SLA may want to delegate that responsibility to the Rec DM. Per the Commissioner's delegation of authority, it is up to the region manager to implement recreation in their region, so it's up to them who has signing authority for this TMO. Go ahead and put in the title of the responsible official, have them sign it and date it, and it may be worth saving an unsigned copy to make editing the document easier later on. As you dive in, I'm sure some of you will find those unique situations that I didn't cover. For all of the outliers, reference the FAQ document. Be sure to reach out to the Recreation Division team with questions and to your region management for decisions. For the sake of keeping this just to how to complete a TMO, I think that covers most of it. Be sure to provide us with feedback and let us know how we can improve this form.
That's all I have for you now. Thanks for your work out there. I sure do love checking out the trails you all manage around the state. Cheers.